So welcome everyone to our seventh UCAB online chat discussion dedicated to the Ukrainian agricultural sector in Europe. My name is Nazar Babitsky. I'm director of the UCAB Brussels office. And this series of online chat is run by UCAB, the Ukrainian Agricultural Business Club, a leading Ukrainian agricultural business association that brings together farmers and agricultural enterprises from all branches of the sector. I'm happy to say that's already our seventh edition. The ambition of our regular online events is to discuss difficult and sensitive issues that usually are associated by the European, by the international public with the integration of Ukrainian agricultural sector to the EU and EU-Ukraine agri-food trade. Our ambition is to inform our international European audience what the Ukrainian agriculture is, what it is not, and we also try to look over the horizon, meaning to discuss long-term prospects and synergies that the Ukrainian agriculture can bring to Europe when it becomes fully integrated into the internal market and also into the EU legislative framework. And today, our topic for discussion is EU-Ukraine trade in poultry. Poultry has been considered as a sensitive product by the European farming community, but at the same time, it plays a very important role in the overall Ukrainian agricultural exports to the EU. So to kick off our discussion, I'm giving the floor now to Alex Lisitsa, president of UCAB and the author of the idea of UCAB online chats about the Ukrainian agricultural sector in Europe. Alex, please launch our discussion.
Thank you very much, Nazar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today for that discussion, which is really sensitive, and especially over the last 2 days, we have got a lot of news from elections in the United States, but also a breakdown of the coalition in Germany last night means actually a lot for Ukraine as well. So we are a little bit afraid of future of our country next. We actually also a little bit in a situation which is quite unpredictable, but at the same time, we are pretty sure that we will manage that, and especially in terms of the movement and integration of Ukraine to the European Union, I'm pretty sure that's the right way for the whole country, but also for the agriculture sector and some subsectors like poultry. So poultry is really a sensitive topic. After the previous discussion with our colleagues about sugar, we know how sugar is important, but poultry is also that topic which will be probably having a very strong discussion with our partners in the European Union. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that dialogue, even about some specific issues like poultry, will help us to find a compromise and a solution. So that's my actual wish for today, that we will find some kind of compromises, solutions for future trade with European Union, even in some specific issues like poultry, eggs, or chicken meat. So I wish all of us today a very fruitful discussion about poultry issues, about the European Union trade negotiations, and I hope that we will find some kind of solutions in the end of the discussion. Thank you very much and good luck today.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now I have a pleasure to introduce, as usual, our very distinguished, very competent panel. We have today a fantastic a range of both Ukrainian and European panelists that represent a very wide range of opinions about poultry sectors, both in Ukraine and Europe, and also about who would talk also about the EU-Ukraine trade in poultry as it stands today and what are the prospects for the future. I'm very pleased to start the introductions with Taras Vysotsky, First Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine, who gracefully found time to join us today for this discussion. I'm also introducing Olga Shevchenko, former chairman of Ukraine's Food Safety Authority, and today Olga acts as an independent expert on food safety in the Ukrainian agricultural sector and approximation of European legislation in this area in the Ukrainian agricultural sector. I also introduce Alexander Avramenko, the chairman of the European Integration Committee in the UCAB. I also have a pleasure to introduce Paul-Henri Lava, Secretary General of European Association for Poultry Processors and Poultry Trade, AVEC. I also have a pleasure to introduce Ms. Manon Dubois, a representative of the European Association of Farmers and Agricultural Cooperatives. I also have a pleasure to welcome Ms. Svetlana Kataitseva. Svetlana Kataitseva is a representative of AgriBusiness, a Ukrainian poultry company. And here we start our discussion. We start our debate with the first question about the effects and impact of EU-Ukraine trade in poultry on the Ukrainian and European market and poultry sector. What we know today is poultry has been a major item in Ukrainian agriculture sector's exports worldwide in the EU market. In 2023, around 41% of total Ukraine's poultry exports went to the EU. At the same time, what we know is the European sector of poultry producers were raising their very serious concerns about how the effects of Ukrainian poultry exports were having on production and the balance of prices on the EU market. My question is first to the EU, to our European guests. How do you see the effects? What's your opinion about the state of play of the EU poultry sector in the 2022, 2023, and first half of this year, in terms of production, in terms of competitiveness on the EU market, and whether your estimates whether the Ukrainian exports of poultry had an impact on your state of play? I would like to pass the floor to Paul-Henri and then to Manon.
Thank you very much, Nazar, and thank you very much for inviting us in this meeting. As the previous speakers say, it's important, very important to have a dialogue, and we are very happy to have this dialogue with you. We also would like to express all our support to Ukrainian citizens in these difficult times. The news are not so good. But we hope that the EU will continue very strong support to Ukrainian citizens in the future, and we are behind us. Regarding your question on the specific situation of the poultry meat sector, I would like a bit to explain what happens when the liberalization was decided, when we decided to go into this ATM. There was a strong market signal that imports from Ukraine would come at quite low price, and quite low price because of the difficult situation you had, because the grain, you could not export the grain to the world market. So basically you have a very cheap and large access to feed, and feed is 70% of our costs. So basically you were able to produce at a very, very low cost, knowing that already you have a huge competitiveness advantage, 30 to 40% compared to EU producers in terms of production costs. So basically there was a strong market signal that potentially there could be a huge import from Ukraine. And that's actually what happened. The imports increased drastically into the EU. And what our members explained us, there were two types of effects on the EU poultry meat market. First, there was a direct effect on the import of on the breast bulk market, which is a market supplying the catering and further processed production. And this specific segment is very much price oriented. And in the EU, usually it's Poland, the producers, the largest producer in the EU, and the ones that has the lower production costs that is able to define the price at EU level. And with this huge competition from Ukraine, the price of this bulk market went very much down, and that had a strong effect on the specific market. And there was a snowball effect where Poland had to lower the price to face this new competition, and then Poland exported in other EU countries, and this snowball effect was going into the other EU production market. Then there was another indirect effect, And this was especially in the neighboring countries, especially Poland, Romania, Slovakia, where we have seen that there are shorter contracts between retailers and producers. And basically, the retailers have been using these new imports from Ukraine that can come as fresh compared to Brazil or Thailand, where due to the distance we can import only frozen products. From Ukraine we can import fresh products. So basically there was this possibility to compete with the poultry meat that was sold in retail markets in these neighboring countries, and that was used by retailers to lower the prices they were ready to pay to the producers. And the last indirect effect was that many EU companies had planned some investments, especially to go into more sustainability in their production. And this investment, because of the threat of unlimited imports from Ukraine, were blocked because due to the uncertainty on the future for them. So those were the three main effects we have noticed and that have been explained to our members, to us, during this period after the liberalization. And clearly, once the new ATM was negotiated when a limit was decided, we see clearly we saw an improvement of the market because of this limit that sent a strong market signal showing that the unlimited imports were not a possibility anymore, and therefore the markets gets much better now.
Thank you, Paul-Henri. Manon, would you like to complement Paul-Henri, perhaps covering a different sector, eggs, if I'm not mistaken? Please
Sure.
feel free to join.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion. It's very important indeed to have this exchange. And in UCABE, we also fully support the Ukrainian citizens in these challenging times. So here today, we want to discuss about those specific sectors. Paul-Henri already described really well the poultry sector, so maybe I'll focus on the eggs on this side. But the impact for the egg sector was quite considerable because for the eggs, the thresholds that was set by the TRQs in the liberalization agreement was actually 4 times higher than what was already in the association agreement. So this was a consequent amount that entered in the EU market and that came into competition on the one side, sometimes with some fresh eggs, especially on the neighboring countries, and sometimes, most of the time actually, on processed eggs. A bit like the poultry consumption, we do have more impacts for the processed products because also consumptions in Europe is driven by out-of-home consumption and processed products, not only by fresh products. So we have to differentiate that. And I know that we have here a bit different views, and it's also very good that we can discuss here today. For the eggs in particular, what I wanted to mention as well, and this is mostly the case for the fresh eggs, in Europe, we have a very good system to distinguish different categories of eggs. And this is also very important for consumers that they are able to choose which type of egg, which type of production system they can come from. This is so well in place that it's easily recognized on each egg. There's a stamp on the eggs with 4 categories. The first one is organic, the second one is free range, the third one is floor production, and the last one is cage production. But as you know as well, in the EU, we have banned already 20 years ago the use of battery cages. And from the information we have, we know that most, if not all the eggs that are exported to the EU from Ukraine comes from these battery cages that are forbidden in the EU. So it's very important for our EU consumers, and especially the ones located near the border with Ukraine, that they cannot, or that at least they are well informed that the eggs they consume come from a different production systems than the one in the EU. And we've seen examples where those eggs were marketed in the supermarket as category 3, which in Europe corresponds to the cage eggs, but those cages are still different. We have enriched cages, and these cages are already forbidden in some member states. and they are also going to be probably forbidden in the next few years with the new animal welfare legislation. So that was the first aspect for eggs. And then just to complement on the poultry, the out-of-home consumption is driving the consumption in the EU right now because of inflation and because the consumer, they want to pay a cheaper cost. But here we have an issue, and this we can maybe develop at a later stage, so we can leave more time for other speakers to describe their situation as well. But what I wanted to mention here is that these, let's say, standard chicken that is entering in competition to ours, it is very difficult for our EU producers to start producing more of these chicken. Why? Because we have a lot of rules that prevents us from producing at, let's say, industrial level or at higher level, because from certain thresholds, we need more permits, we need, there is more administrative burden, and it's more and more difficult for our producers to create those new farms, let's say. Also, there is a negative public opinion about it. So I think here we operate a little bit at different scales, and this is what is problematic for our producers, and also what is a bit unfair for the consumers if they are not well informed.
Thank you, Manon. Of course, so today we already see at least two topics we will address later in our discussion. First, of course, is the discussion to what extent we have an impact of Ukrainian imports of poultry and eggs on the EU market. We of course will take it into the broader context. And second, of course, is the level playing field between the Ukrainian and European producers as far as standards are concerned. And for this reason, we'll be very interested to listen to views, to opinions of our colleague Olga, who in the past was associated with overseeing the implementation of European standards into various areas of Ukrainian agriculture sector. But now I'd like to pass the floor to our Ukrainian colleague, Alexandra. Alexandra, we know from the Commission, from the European Commission figures that despite the entry of Ukrainian imports onto the EU poultry market in 2022-2023, there are two facts that has been, let's say, acknowledged even by the European Commission. First, the European poultry production actually grew. And second, even in terms of global market, European Union remains the third largest exporter of poultry after Brazil and the United States. What's your view what's your take on the situation? First, in terms of your view on the European market and how Ukrainian imports were really disrupted this or not. And then I would like to ask you to develop a little bit more about the importance of agriculture of EU market for Ukrainian exporters of poultry. Alexandra, please.
Many questions. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Happy to see you all. Happy that we have a possibility to discuss. That's one of the definitely hot questions to discuss between Ukrainian and European agricultural producers and their representatives. Few options. I can either tell you what I think, or I can show you the presentation. So I don't know how much time we have, Nazar.
Feel free to share with us the presentations. We have approximately up to 10 minutes for this.
Okay, I will try to be as short as possible. Please tell me if you see the presentation. Do you see?
Yes, well seen, well visible.
Okay, just hope it's gonna work this way. So first of all, I need to say that the data was provided by also the Poultry Union of Ukraine. This is the association that is actually covers the poultry sector. Together with the eggs production, but still, as we are the host and we are producing this whole event, I'm speaking also on behalf of Poultry Union of Ukraine today, but also for some members that are also in our association. So, okay, first and foremost, to be short, Manon already told that the European production of poultry and eggs is not extensive. And on contrary, it is extensive in Ukraine. Why? Because before almost 2004, 2005, speaking currently only about poultry, before that time, Ukrainian imports of poultry products were very high, and the share of imports in total consumption was over 60%. That was a very extreme situation for Ukrainian food security in terms of poultry products, and there were necessities, or there was a necessity to change the situation on the market fast. The only possible solution to this gap was to actually have an extensive model of production. Because, for example, before 2004, Ukrainian importers were taking poultry to the Ukrainian market, not from the EU mostly, but from USA and Brazil, which already was showing the extensive model of production, which already was showing that in a relatively short period of time, the share of imports can be decreased and the share of internal production can increase. That's what happened basically from the period of 2004 till 2007. 2008, because slowly, if you can see, the share of imported poultry and consumed poultry in Ukraine decreased significantly. We still import, we still have an open market for that, but in terms of satisfying the needs of internal consumers, this is mostly the internal production. What is also very much important is that at the beginning of 21st century, in 2000s, Ukrainian consumption was not into poultry that much. It was more in pork. But with the shift, with the increase of availability of internal product, which is less expensive, which is more affordable for the internal consumers, the level of poultry consumption in Ukraine increased. It is also important to understand that in Ukraine, we have officially registered companies like UCABEvent, like MHP, like some other producers that are allowed to export to the European Union. At the same time, we have local production from the households. Well, in the ideal world, those households will be considered as farmers, but it's not the ideal world yet in Ukraine. And this is the production in the households for their own local consumption, produced in their backyard, but they're still influence the internal market, because even their share decreased from 36% in 2005 up to 10% in 2023, it is still a relatively high number of production of household production for their own local consumption. Again, some figures about the foreign trade. As you can see, the highest level of the export of poultry from Ukraine was in 2021, was 458,000 tons. From 2022, the level decreased. We expect in 2024 the figure to be 440,000 tons. Currently, during 9 months of 2024, we exported 330,000 tons. So if no severe or extreme situation happen on Ukrainian market, we hope that we will be able to reach this amount. This is the structure of Ukrainian export that used to be in 2016, 2020, and 2023. What is also important in this graph, in this lower part of the chart on the left side, you can see the structure of the export logistics. In 2021, the whole Ukrainian agricultural sector was dependent on the export from the seaports. Almost 95% of all agricultural products was exported through the sea. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the seaport export was blocked. The only possible solution was to export through the solidarity lanes, which are very much important for us still. Why? Because even with the opening of the Black Sea export in the end of 2023, the poultry products, especially eggs products, cannot be exported as refrigerators are not entering Odessa, and it's not that easy to export by sea from Ukrainian ports anymore. That's why our main trade destinations for both poultry and eggs, they're not that much active right now because we basically lose our competitive advantage there. That's why we also depend that much on European Union. But now I want to return to the question of the production cost. This was relatively updated from the European Commission. That's August 2024. You see the level, there's quite a nice margin. We're happy to see the margin, which means that the European market not just stabilized, it works pretty well. The question is, do we consider only poultry producers, or are we also considering consumers in this case? But that's apparently an open question. What I also try to do is not just show the production costs for poultry production in EU, but also to compare it with Ukrainian. Currently, we do not have as nice chart as the European Commission shows, but I think at some point we will work on that. What I have found is that there is a research of the Wageningen Institute conducted in 2017, that was the last one, showing the differences in production costs in different countries. There's EU, USA, also Brazil, Russia, and in the end, it's Ukraine. Again, that was in 2017. We can see that that time, the cost of production of the European farmers of poultry products was a bit more than 80 euro cents per kilogram of live weight. Returning back to this slide, we can clearly see that it's less than 80 euro cents per kilogram currently. So which means that European farmers are on the right track of increasing their efficiency and introducing new technologies to be more competitive. But speaking about Ukrainian costs of production, we can see that in 2017, it showed that we were approximately on the, 67 euro cent per 1 kg of live weight. But our situation has also changed and changed significantly. So for example, the energy substitutes for 9% of production costs in the EU, and feed is approximately 76%. And at the same time, I showed you the charts or the tables of energy price in Ukraine in 2023 and 2024, showing that our energy price is not that far from European, and in 2024 it's even exceeded, which means that it is already increasing our cost of production. Also speaking about Ukrainian being a feed producer, super strong and so on and so forth, and we could have a surplus of feed production and etc., is not working anymore. And especially it didn't also work in 22 and 23. Why? Because the facilities of producing feed did not increase, meaning that even if the feed was cheap, it does not necessarily mean that we could produce it more than we used to do before. And also, have not put this chart, but I will add in case it will be required. The amount of poultry heads in Ukraine decreased in 22 and 23. So even if we produce the feed, there would be no one to whom we could give this feed to. That's why the situation in which we happened in 22 and 23 is not that easy for understanding from the European perspective, because our situation was unique, in which we had definitely some possibilities, but they were not used because we could not make them to be used. And also, so the feed, which constitutes 76% of feed in the European Union, and I'm not sure approximately the same number in Ukraine, maybe in the range from 60 to 70%, a bit less than in the EU. But still, the prices that were in August 2024, why I'm showing August 2024 is because in this chart, it's also August 2024. So that's the latest figures. And if we see in the August this year, the price, for example, for soya meal, which is used mostly for the production of poultry feed, was in Ukraine more expensive than in the European Union, which means that even though we have some advantages, it does not necessarily mean that we are still advantageous. Advantageous? I don't know how to make this word correctly, Nazar. You will correct me afterwards on that. In the end, also, we have other costs of production in Ukraine, which also include salaries, which also include some social responsibility, not just for the workers, but also for their families. And also we have a lot of people who were called or mobilized to serve in the front line, which companies usually also support and support their families. So, I mean, the social cost and also in the cost structure of production increases a lot. And therefore, we might be still competitive in some positions, but I'm more than sure we're losing this competitiveness with a new day of war in Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. Just summing up
I'm finishing. Wait, just
okay.
Two more slides. That's in poultry, in eggs, the situation is approximately the same.
Go ahead.
Meanwhile, I've found the production costs of Brazilian poultry. Paraná, one of the biggest agricultural states in Brazil, has shown that average, the prices here, they are in reals, Brazilian reals, but I found the exchange rate, I've showed it, and I've calculated the average production cost of 1 kilogram of live weight of poultry is 445 reals, which is approximately 67 euro cent, which means that Brazilian poultry is way more competitive than Ukrainian, than European, and maybe even some others. Meanwhile, we have this situation on the European market. Again, this is an open question to do we only need to protect farmers, or do we also think about consumers and how the whole economy works? Because, for example, if the price will still be increasing, and if I'm not mistaken, the prices for poultry currently are one of the highest in the EU throughout the whole history, and very much enjoyable for all the importers. If the price is going to increase, how many consumers will have to decide not to buy poultry, or maybe choose fish, or maybe choose not to eat meat at all? So in this case, who's going to win? Apparently not the European farmers, not the Ukrainian suppliers, but probably only Brazilians, who's going to still enjoy quite low production cost and quite high margins. Last, what I want to say is that we've heard a lot from European stakeholders that Ukrainian imports have disrupted the market, they were unlimited, they were not predictable, and so on and so forth. Now you have predictable imports. Even more, it has been licensed from Ukrainian side. But still, the share of Ukrainian product on the European market is not that big to influence the situation. Meanwhile, we see that Ukraine is not the biggest supplier. There's still Brazil. And maybe in that case, when EU is providing, or it is discussed that the EU can provide high TRQs for the Mercosur in the future, maybe there is a need to change the view, because in our case, Ukraine is already a candidate country, is already obliged to follow the European norms and standards, and Olga Shevchenko will speak more about, and maybe Svetlana from Agro, and will speak how it is implemented in Ukrainian business. But maybe we should find the common ground and to see who can actually more influence the European market rather than Ukrainian product. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. So just quickly, I wanted us to, in a summary of your presentation, I wanted simply again to emphasize, would you agree with the statements that we sometimes hear from our international stakeholders that Ukrainian poultry sector still has like unlimited capacity to grow and to continue its expansion to a European market? In the context of how would you summarize perhaps like 2 or 3 factors related to the war that really put a limit, if any, on ability of Ukrainian poultry producers to compete on the European market?
Ukraine, as any other country, does not have unlimited capacities on anything, and especially the country during at war. We have very much limited capacities in terms of energy. We have very much limited capacities in terms of financing, in terms of people resources, and there is a list of limits that we have. And especially in current circumstances, it is not that easy to actually develop the capacities. It is not that easy to increase the production, since we see that the number of heads is decreasing, the level of production was also decreasing, especially since the beginning of the war, and we are slowly increasing our production and trying to return to normal pace. And for example, making the investments in production, it is possible. You still have a possibility to attract investments from abroad. And to be honest, we are more than happy to attract any European investments in all the sectors and in poultry as well. But still, to put investments, you need to have an understanding, or at least believe that you have a stable trade, at least with one of your partners, and you can develop or even diversify your export channels, and you can work on that. But European Union itself is one big importer, and the numbers of imports of poultry in European Union, they are increasing. So people who are living in the EU and tourists, they prefer to eat poultry rather than pork or beef. That's why the interest for the poultry will be increasing even more on the European market. The question is whether the European farmers will be able to keep up with pace, whether European farmers will be able to diversify, because currently Poland is the #1 supplier of poultry in the EU. In EU itself, in some countries, depends on more than 70% on Polish poultry. And maybe it's also the question of the food security inside of the European Union, because this high level of dependency is not also very good.
Thank you, Alexandra. I remind a few house rules for our audience, also for our guest panelists. Of course, we always welcome a free and lively discussions on the topics that we raise in the course of our event. And I also remind our audience that our webinar will be followed by a 20 minutes Q&A session, and we kindly invite everyone to post their questions as they listen to our debate on the chat window or Q&A window of our webinar platform. So, and then in the end, we'll be able to invite our panelists to answer them. Now we have a possibility.
Nazar?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think it's good if we can have a kind of dialogue. Is it possible to just have a few comments or questions to Alexandra? I'll be quick. Just one element on the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned the extensive production in Ukraine. And to be honest, I have difficulties to understand that, because at least for the exports to the EU, I have the understanding that 90% of the exports are coming from MHP, the main Ukrainian company, that is also producing 70% of the chicken meat production in Ukraine. And I don't think we can qualify that production as extensive. It's actually the opposite. Is in terms of full integration, very intensive production in farms of 2 million chickens, which is quite different from even the biggest farms we have in the EU. I think it's unfair to qualify that as extensive. Then you mentioned the dependence on the EU market, and I was surprised actually to read in the news recently an interview of a quote from the CEO of MHP, who mentioned that actually the ATM limitation was not an issue because they have other export possibilities in Middle East and in Asia. And I was surprised, but I was very much welcoming actually that. So what's your take on that? On soy meal, I'm surprised also with the higher prices because I don't think Ukraine is producing so much soy, and basically most of the poultry companies are using sunflower for the protein part, and that's actually something very interesting for us because we are dependent on soy from South America, and that's also maybe an area where we could collaborate much more with Ukraine in the future to develop soy production in Ukraine. And the last point, and that's something point where I would very much agree with what you said on Brazil, that is extremely competitive, and we have 300,000 tons of imports in the EU of Brazil, and the Commission is negotiating Mercosur agreement to add 180,000 tons to this amount, and I totally agree that all this quantity that we are granting to Mercosur, to potentially Thailand in the future, will be quantity that we will not be able to run to Ukraine. So clearly here we have a common interest, and I think we have to fight together on that to avoid and to go against this Mercosur agreement because it's in our common interest. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to react.
Thank you, Paul-Henri. Any other comments from
Yes.
our?
Can I just add a quick remark as well?
Please.
Well, I completely agree with what Paul-Henri just said. And I think actually to tackle all these topics, we would need more than just a 1 hour discussion. So we are really happy if you want to discuss this further at another time. But I would also agree with something you said, Alexandra, before, that we need to have a good understanding of each other's production, because the EU is not just one country, it's 27 different member states that also have 27 sometimes different systems of production and different rules. So for this, we would really be happy if we can learn a little bit more on how we produce and what we need to produce as well. And here we can find the synergies that Paul-Henri talked about. But just to say that we cannot just have a look at the price at EU level and deduct if there is an impact or not on our production, because we have different categories of products that have a different value. And what we notice also in the European Union is that our premium products, they are gaining in value, but they are not raising in volume because also there is a competition with lower quality products that enters into the EU. Not just talking about Ukrainian, we're talking mainly about Brazil here as well. So maybe instead of looking just at the price, the average price, we can have a deeper discussion on specific cuts that we import, export, specific type of chicken, fresh, frozen chicken, and also where it is going in our consumption. It is going directly into the supermarkets, or is it going into the processed products, or is it going to the out of home consumption? That is also very important for our farmers and for our consumers as well. So that was just the comment.
Thank you.
Can
Alexandra, you
I?
have
Sure,
of
I'll be
course.
super short. So currently in Ukraine, there is 110 producers of poultry products. 110 companies that produce. So it is quite a big amount for our country. What I was trying to say when I was saying it's extensive model in Ukraine rather than the one that works in the European Union is that in EU you have farmers who raise the chicken and then who give the chicken for the slaughter to the company. In Ukraine, we do not have this luxury of having different farmers who would raise the chicken and then give it to the slaughterhouse. The companies themselves, they tend to control the whole chain, because that's what I'm trying to say, extensive, not just about the.
We call that integration rather than extensive.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, let's call it integrated system of production. That's one thing. The second thing, I luckily I think so. I'm not the CEO or not the head of the board of MHP, so I cannot tell what he was actually thinking about when he was telling that. But what I can say is that MHP is not just Ukrainian company; it's international company right now, and which also have Ukrainian production. But on contrary, and Paul Henri, that's something that we have discussed in private with you, that in Ukraine, it's not just about poultry and again, poultry production from MHP. And again, 110 producers, UCABEvent is one of them. And I think it is a very great opportunity for you to hear someone besides the MHP, because it's not only about them. The third thing, low quality products. We do not have low quality products. If we would have low quality products, we would not be certified and would not have European number. That's it. I don't want to hear any more about low quality from Ukrainian side, because it's not anymore. And last but not least, supermarkets or processors, or in the end, where Ukrainian products go. I know how it works with other agricultural products. So I think it also how it goes with poultry and with the eggs. Products are going to processing. They're not going directly to the supermarkets, because we do not have that much nice brands that will be understandable and reachable to European consumers. It's mostly local, it's mostly from the farmers. I think that, for example, consumers in somewhere in the village in France would definitely like to buy in the supermarket the products from the local farmer, and they will look for that. And that's why Ukrainian products, they're not competing at the most marginal place on the market, on the supermarket store. That's why we are competing with those who supply products for processors. And that's the difference. So we need to keep that in mind. And so in the end, we need to push also those who provide for processors. And those countries are Brazil, UK, Thailand, and some others.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. I think we have to move on and to take advantage of the situation that we actually have a representative of a poultry producer among us. And I'm talking, of course, about Svetlana. Svetlana, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company? How do you, have a very brief outlook, and also have a couple of other questions to you. First, if you could describe briefly, if you can, the impact of the first months of the war on your production, supply chains, and ability to access both national market and probably export markets, whether exports play an important role in your revenues. Are your products of good quality? But again, please refrain from using this opportunity as a marketing tool, because it's really, we're talking about the entire sector, and we like to have you as a representative of the sector as such. And last but not least, how do you see the challenge of adapting to the European standards of rearing poultry? I'm sure that probably if and when you are certified to export to your market, the key, I'm sure that the key aspects of food safety according to the EU standards have been addressed. But standards of rearing poultry, how do you look at them? Svetlana, please, over to you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for being involved in such discussions about the poultry. And as we see that Ukraine is not only a democratic country, but it's only democratic in business also. So every of us have a possibility to discuss our point of view and to be heard. Thank you, European colleagues, to have an opportunity to say about that Ukraine poultry is involved to many producers. MHP, you here because it's the largest of the facilities for Ukrainian poultry, but there are a lot of Ukrainian producers such as UCABEvent. We are the second for our volumes facilities. We are vertically integrated corporation, so it means that we have not only slaughterhouse for slaughtering the chicken. So we consist of a feed mill, a parent flock, a hatchery, poultry farms, and the processing plant. So it's closed circle to be sure that the quality of the poultry that we are producing, we are sure that we produce high quality, not low cheap or something else, high quality products. And we're controlling it on each stage of their growth. So I insist on that. We are high quality products. And now we returned from the SIAL, from the Paris. We were involved in the exhibition, all Ukrainian producers. We were with the stands, and it shows which country, which taste, which quality, which prices for European market is most adaptable and competitive. And we've seen that a lot of European suppliers, a lot of European processing plants, European retail say that our Ukrainian quality is better than Brazilian. They ask us about what is the whole situation about 2025 year, what we see, how we can be representative of Ukrainian products for European market, and so on. So such situation shows that we are not only say that we are good quality, we are good production. We say that we are competitive with the European market also, and the consumers are choosing us. As for war conditions for Ukraine and the first days of the war 2022 year, it was high difficult for Ukraine. This is shown, this is known, and I will be not stopping on how it will be a lot of stages for difficult situations for expert companies, how to move, because we usually have the Black Sea and didn't have any opportunity to go to any other ports and to have difficult how to move for logistics. For 2022 year, we have such first question, how to move, because we didn't have the Black Sea. And we are very thankful for European countries that were open for us their ports, and we have an opportunity to be logistic for European ports also. That's appreciated thing. And the first step was to move, to understand how it works, and to organize all the things that must be controlling quality, controlling logistics, and controlling the final, getting this quality product for our suppliers. For such opportunity, I'm also very thankful for food safety system in Ukraine, because they are controlling every hour steps, starting from hatchery, starting from grossing, starting from slaughtering, and in the end, when our products getting to the European consumers. So we are sure that we produce a high quality product, food safety system controlling all the stages of our products to the European requirements, of course. And the European consumer is choosing if they want Ukrainian poultry, Brazilian poultry, European poultry. And as we hope, as we are candidate for European Union, so approximately in future, Ukraine maybe also be like a European producer. But now we are talking about the Ukrainian producer. So I must insist on the fact that we are not only vertically integrated corporation that produces only poultry. In AgriOven consisting different branches. We grow in vegetables like onions, potatoes. We also have a branch of pork. So we are huge in Ukraine and also have different branches for corporation. But now we're talking about the poultry. And I must say also that we are the new producer in the European Union from Ukraine for 2023 year, because we have a strategy to build a new factory for exactly the European requirements. And we were building it for 3 years. And in 2023, get only the accreditation for European requirements. We both and invest on the European equipment, because a lot of our consumers not only want the high quality of the product, they can see that the product is packing as they usually see this product on the shelves of the European producers. So we invest also in the equipment like Holland producer Maine, and gives our suppliers this opportunity to have to see the product high quality packaging, and there is no like the lowest price for such, because the production cost for such kind of products must be controlling all the stages, must be packaging in the kind of the European requirements. That's why we cannot be like a low with price. We want to be in the price competitive for the European market. That's why we are discussing now what we see each other step for the next year, and how the European market is important for Ukrainian producers, because Ukrainian producers invest in their production to be competitive with all the European producers, like to be on the one stage as the European before the quality as they controlling and the packaging as they doing. So like the system of the same European requirements. Must also say that for these 3 years, it was a huge situation also for Ukrainian producers in the situation that we have like not competitive conditions for European countries, like mobilization of our people. That's a huge question for us also, but we for this year know how to be working and not impact and not have the impact on our kind of product or on our prices or etc. So any of other consumers didn't see how is the cost, not only the cost like in money and financial, what is the cost of the product that we're doing by our people, by our Brazilian people, and that they want to be Ukraine on the first stage of the European Union, seen not like a struggling country that wants help or something else, but to see the country that wants to be on the same level of all the requirements of the European Union, and the consumer can see this and to choose product not only because this is struggling company from Ukraine, no, because the taste, the view, the high quality is the same that he wants to see and he wants to taste.
Thank you. Thank you, Svetlana. If I may quickly ask 2 more questions to you. To what extent, I understand that you are now preparing for actively exporting to the EU once you pass the approvals by the Food Safety Authority. To what extent European market will play an important role in your export strategy? To what extent? How do you see the importance of that market for you? And second, are you ready to invest, in fact, in standards that look at the how to say, the production, the rearing of poultry, as compared with food safety chain of requirements? How would you respond to that?
Yes, must also give the information that AgriOven exports poultry from 2006 year. We operate in more than 66 countries. We are not opening for shipping our products or exporting our products to European Union, but it's the one of the strategy for increasing our capacity, because each year we're increasing in the production. We build new farms, we build and increase our hatchery facilities. That is, each year we have the volumes that are growth. That's why we are looking for the new market and to have the possibility to export our products in huge volumes for each market. To understood that it not be like an impact on their activity or something else. We are not doing it for only one country. For now, we have exporting some volumes and some strategy for Gulf countries, for Africa, but their quantity, limit quantity, because the Brazilian for Gulf countries is the most huge exporter, and we cannot increase our volumes because of their capacities or something else. That's why we are looking also for the main markets that are looking for our products, such as European Union, and we see that we can be like a producer that also not only wants to export, but the consumers are choosing our products and interested in our products. that we see from their requests and requirements to our products. As for the question about the second part, yes, we are looking for the opportunity to have volumes, such volumes that we are, as a producer, see for the strategy, not only for 1 year, but as we're planning for reinvestment, for our strategy for increasing or something else, we need to see the stability situation with the focus of the market, like the focus for European Union markets, like the quantities that Ukraine producers can be moving with, because there is not only staying for one producer, two producers. There are a lot of producers that gives the good quality, the good taste. Also, we invest in European requirements, because not all of our countries are opening for European Union. That's why we see that not all of us can be shown as a European producer. That's why we are invest in our holding these requirements, and we want to be sure that European market is seeing this and opening also for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Svetlana.
I need to say that AgriOven is already exporting to the European Union. It received the certification in 2023.
Yes. AgriOven starting exporting and opening for European market in August 2023. So we are 1 year, more than 1 year on the European market.
Thank you. Thank you, Svetlana. I think it was a very instructive experience that you shared with us, and we wish you all the best in your efforts to go international and to support your company in this way, in more meaningful way. Now,
Sorry,
I would like to.
Can I make a quick reaction
Yes,
to this?
please.
Just a small correction, because I'm really sorry if there was a misunderstanding about the quality. I don't think I talked about quality rather than standards. If I said quality, I'm sorry. I'm really talking about standards, and standards, we talk about legislation here. We talked about the cost of production, but the cost that the farmer have to pay in Europe is not just the cost of production. We have a series of legislation regarding animal welfare, environmental standards, that they also have to apply, and that, to our knowledge, is not applied, all of it, in Ukraine now. Not to mention that we do have some support from the European budget, but that only support improvements in animal welfare, organic production, free range, risk management, but not the standard production, let's say. So all this to mention that these costs in animal welfare standards, they will improve, cages are banned, so there is a difference of standards. I'm not talking about quality, but we cannot deny that the standard for eggs, especially, are not the same in the EU and in Ukraine. And then, in addition of this, for poultry, we have the marketing standards that are really well regulated. We also have, through the nitrates directive, additional administrative burden for our farmers and cost. And we have a revised industrial emission directive that just entered into force recently, and this tackles farms for laying hens from 20,000 animals. They have to pay extra cost, and there is also administrative burden extra, and public inquiries for the farmers to build new farms that are that big. You know that 20,000 laying hens is not that big, but from this number there is already extra cost. And for the broilers is 40,000. So you also can tell that it's not so much. So I'm not talking about production cost or quality. I'm talking about also all these costs that are compulsory in the EU because of the legislation. So sorry if it was a misunderstanding, but I'm not talking about quality here.
Manon, that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Manon. I think you're painting a little bit too stark a picture for our Ukrainian producers about how difficult it is to work in the European market. And I think now we will move to the part of our discussion that will address exactly that. I would like to invite Olga Shevchenko to the debate, and thank you, Olga, and all our panelists who we reach very shortly, for your patience. Olga, you had a fantastic, I think, and very, how to say, rewarding career as an expert in the Food Safety Authority. I think you spent, what, more than a decade growing through the ranks to become a chief a chief of the department or a direction responsible for international cooperations. And eventually you led the Food Safety Authority a few years ago. Of course, you cannot now talk officially on behalf of the Food Safety Authority, and we are not asking you to do so. We would like to ask for your, let's say, reflection as an independent expert today. We remember that I think it was in 2013 that Ukraine first successfully completed the dialogue with the European Commission, DG Sante, on auditing of its food safety system and oversight in line with EU standards, and eventually Ukraine was granted the opportunity to export poultry into the EU. How it was achieved, in few words, how would you describe the process, its rigors, how rigorous it was, and how Ukrainian poultry sector, along with the Food Safety Authority, was able to comply with this? Can you share with us your insights, your experience?
Of course, Nazar, thank you. Probably good afternoon, colleagues. And, I also would like to comment some reflections from the previous comments. So I will try to include everything. We are talking today about Ukrainian export, and I exactly remember the time when Ukraine received the approval from European Commission. And of course, I will have some discussion on today's standards, what we're talking, but before I would reflect some important issue. You know that yesterday there was a parliamentary interviewing of the Commission Designee for Health and Animal Welfare, Mr. Rahali, and exactly, I even not count how many times, but members of European Parliament asked about the control of imported products to European market. And actually, it's not a surprise for me. It's one of the important always part of SPS in any country. But what I usually ask myself or speaking with colleagues who not working in a food safety agency, what surprised me that sometimes Europeans do not know about national European system of the introduction of providing approvals for exports into European market. And probably on the sample of Ukraine, on this poultry eggs, I can share to explain how Ukraine granted the right, this long-term process, because it took more than 5 years before 2012, the official approval was granted for poultry, in 2013 for eggs and eggs products. And the process after, because when the country received the approval for export to European Union, it doesn't mean that then all control is stopped. No. The process of granting export, particularly for Ukraine, for any other country, and the official procedure of European Commission was regarding the assessment of legislation. Let's remember it was 2010, 2011, because the first mission started in 2009. That was the assessment of the system of control of the government, laboratories, certification procedure, official control in place, organizing of production, system of producing, animal health issues. Animal welfare was not assessed, but it's an issue that I will talk in later. So this long-term process include verification visits by European Commission, and before Ukraine granted this right, we had 4 missions. So these 4 missions in different times, in different areas, they provided a possibility to European Commission say that Ukrainian control over the system of production of poultry products, egg products, comply the level of legislation and standards of European Commission. We do not talk now about the whole Ukraine. We understand that now Ukraine is a candidacy, and our commitments to fulfill the all legislation for all Ukrainian producers, including the small ones. But for the moment when Ukraine granted, we were even not signed the association agreement. It did not oblige to harmonized legislation, but exactly the poultry sector was the first who started to do the harmonization of European standards in Ukrainian legislation, starting from 2010, 11, 12. So it was a long process. That's how Ukraine granted the export. Then we speak about more, let's say, daily activities than today Ukraine exporting. After Ukraine received approval in 2012, 2013, we had 4 missions, again, new 4 missions to check if Ukraine still comply with procedures, with European standards, with the mechanism. So this, you see, it's not one-day decision, it's day-to-day activities. And even now, when Ukrainian products coming, I'm sorry, to European market, there is a control at the border. Control made in by laboratory testing, checking of the products, labeling, traceability, and many others. And this is, this is exactly the shared responsibility when we're speaking about food safety, because there is a responsibility of food producer who produce products in accordance with the standards, the responsibility of the government of Ukraine who checks and certifying every day these certificates, and there is responsibility of inspectors at the border of member states who check in the products. And this exactly that I tried to put together all this complicated process, but it's just to understand that this is not just the willing, you want to export, you start to export. No, Ukraine have a lot of producers. For today, we have only 14 poultry producers which are approved for export to European market. And this means that these 14 producers are comply with all European standards. When we speak about animal welfare, for example, it's a really, sensitive point. And then we look from the point of view of national commitments. Ukraine is going to implement the national legislation for animal health and welfare. But when we're speaking about the exporters, they already checked for all the standards. That's the difference when we're speaking. If today we have more legislation implemented, of course, more exporters European Union receive from Ukraine. That's the points need to be account. I needed to say something important, yes, about the changing of animal welfare. And of course, this is also the point then, even in European Union, the changing in 2 years, this cages ban and many others, still the issue, you need to understand it's an issue for European Union to implement the legislation. And you have in parallel Ukraine, whose exporters implement the same standards, but there is the rest of Ukraine of small households, of small producers who do not want to export to the European Union, but they must comply in the future with European standards. And despite the fact of war, they will do this because the government approved the orders, start to implement them. That's a very comprehensive process. Probably we need another a few hours of discussion, but to sum up, probably I would like to explain that in order to understand how Ukrainian products and the level of the not quality, not standards, it's a, let's say, it's a golden standard. You comply, you export. You not comply, you do not export. And if you would to export, you need to comply with the legislation. That's the point. Doesn't matter any influences of, there is a lot of rumors, of course, a lot of influence of Ukrainian experts, but there is the point of trust. Are you trust European Commission? Are you trust European inspectors? What you need to ask yourself. And this is the balanced process. Ukraine guarantees only for those who comply. European Union checks this and allow Ukraine to export. That's we have for today in the general summary of the process. Thank you. If you have any clarification, I try to comment also previous comments of colleagues because it's really important when we speak about Ukrainian export to European market. Thank you, Nazar.
Of course, Olga. Thank you very much for this, for sharing your experience and your views on this. Then about the production standards, we understand now that this is like the next point of concern, and of course, it's not only related to Ukraine. And Ukrainian exporters already are present on the EU market. At the same time, Ukraine is facing, let's say, the challenge of adapting to this regulatory requirements. We understand, of course, I repeat that you are not no longer a member of the Food Safety Authority, and no longer representing the government. But in your view, how Ukraine would fare, how Ukraine would be able to manage to adopt to this new, let's say, wave of regulatory requirements? What our sector needs to do in order to help itself to adapt, and whether, if there are difficulties, do we need any additional support from European Union, from the European Commission, in terms of assistance, in terms of investments, etc. Your views. What do you think?
To be fair, you know, it's a really complicated issue because let's imagine today there is no war and we will have totally different discussion, of course. But in the matter of Ukraine's candidacy application and the population of Ukraine, they choose the European direction, is definitely. And this means the same for producers. So we understand that we need to implement European standards. But the same way, European standards need some level of implementation in Ukraine from the point of view of cost. And we also totally need for industry to understand this. The point, it's not always about I want to export to European market or I don't want. It's a level of, you know, it's just the strategy, the national strategy to implement the standards. Of course, European legislation provides some derogations for local production, which can be different from European standards. It is normal because not all European producers exported even outside one European member state. This is a point which Ukraine also can use for the future. But let's be honest that for implementation of all European standards and even future European standards, because there is European legislation changes all the time, depends on the challenges, we will need not just time, human resources, external assistance in understanding and best implementation, because there is no the same systems of implementation of European legislation in European Union. They are all different based on some factors of the country. We will need a lot of money, and this is true. And here the industry and the government need to make the decision and to speak with European Union regarding how many time and how many costs they need to implement. But it's a willing, and this willing is important. And even compare with the experience of other member states who joined recently European Union, it took for them a lot of years. Ukraine wants to do it very fast. And this what's need to be the difference. Nobody did this in the war conditions, and the government and the industry under the biggest pressure that ever appears in the even SPS system. So just to sum up, that there is a lot of challenges. It is true. There is a lot of points to implement the legislation, fast adoption, fast implementation, and the government exactly over the 2 years do the success stories of this adoption. But this is also the point to think for European Union, how they can take benefits from Ukrainian accession to European market because of the feeds, because not only of the products which exported, there is a lot of balancing in European Union which Ukraine can benefit as well. But we need some external support in different ways. Thank you, Nazar.
Thank you very much, Olga. Now we turn to our next, but probably the central figure, the central panelist in our discussion, First Deputy Minister Taras Vysotsky. Minister, thank you very much for your patience of staying with us that long. I hope you at least benefited from this discussion by listening to all the views of the stakeholders, and I'm sure that you will benefit from this in terms of policy making in the ministry, and also, as we are aware, you are involved in the international dialogue with our partners in Europe and elsewhere on Ukraine's agricultural exports. My question to you, Minister, are as follows. Your ministry, along with other government agencies in Ukraine, had to navigate a very difficult environment, first starting with unilateral measures by Poland and other countries to stop Ukrainian agricultural imports into their national territories and also interfering with transit. You had to deal with farmer protests blocking the border, and eventually it all culminated in the extension of autonomous trade measures by the European Commission, which were significantly limited by so-called safeguard measures. And poultry, of course, was one of the sensitive products that were covered by these safeguard measures. Your view, or at least if you can share with us your experience, how did the government try to resolve the differences bilaterally with its neighbors like Poland, Romania, and Bulgaria? Did we try to come across to the sensitivities expressed on behalf of the farmers by the European Commission? Did we try to somehow manage the exports of sensitive products, including poultry, in order to, let's say, to play along? Minister, over to you, if you can share with us your views and your experiences here.
Thank you, Nazar. Good afternoon, dear participants of this event. To be honest, very interesting, very professional. Indeed, I have benefited a lot that have been able to plan to stay all the time online with the experts, and thank you for your views. Really very high professional and evidence-based discussion. So thank you for all of the participants of the discussion. I will try to be brief because if to tell all the details about your questions, I'm not sure that all the participants have one additional hour to listen, but at least to make some most important moments. So first of all, it's very necessary to keep honest, open, and fact-based dialogue. Actually, this event is also about it. So we, as a ministry, were in constant dialogue with European Commission, constant dialogue with Poland, Hungary, Slovak Republic, Romania, and Bulgaria, so all the member states. As the same, our neighbors, about all of the events of 2022-2023 and this agricultural trade with European Union. Also, we were facilitating, and here we are thankful for the association, that the dialogue was built on the level of professional associations. There has been lots of meetings with Copa Cocheca, with our associations on different levels. I know with AWAC, with other UCAB, Poultry Union. So it's very important to keep this dialogue on the level of association and also even producers. So I'm sure that it's the more we have honest and fact-based dialogue, the easier it is to navigate. Because already now, as we look at the current situation, we do understand that all of the, how to say, fears of the previous 2 years, they are not in place. The experts already mentioned, but just briefly, production costs. So now we have the price of corn higher than the European Union domestic market. So we don't now have any less prices. Soya, corn, or other cereals. Sometimes it's even higher. Then we have the same in Mati or others. Now we have the logistics more or less returned to the previous, not completely, but with the Black Sea in most cases. And also we see that the geography of international export from Ukraine is returning to something more as it was in 2021. So all of these fears and market distortion, how to say, they're not in place. At the same time, it's very important for us to follow the rules, and even when these ATM were introduced, actually in some directions we have the initiatives from the producers and not from only poultry meat, but also, for example, from sugar producers, to plan and monitor the export volumes from Ukraine and really distribute it through the year by introducing the licensing. So we, as the government of Ukraine, voluntarily, it wasn't the obligation, but we introduced the licensing, example of poultry meat export to Europe. Now we are making the same with sugar, actually, and also with, if necessary, with other products, really to show that we follow the rules. Of course, we keep negotiations that this quota should be abandoned or increased, that's definitely, but as the decision is done and it is legally in place, we make everything to make the implementation convenient for all of the participants on both sides, and to make it, and not to create, for example, situation when lots of volumes are exported within 2-3 months, different prices or problems on the market, and then after we don't export and so on. So and I will remember, it's not the issue of this call, but that we made the same with cereals. So we, as the government of Ukraine, still in September 2023, also made the licensing of export of wheat, corn, sunflower, and rapeseed to the neighboring European Union's countries to show our readiness for dialogue and to show that it's always possible to cooperate and it is always better for all of the participants than to make one-side restrictions, as unfortunately we had in case of some 3 countries. So our strategy for the future is the same. So far, we are ready to make this voluntarily some limitations of Ukrainian exports by sensitive products to sensitive countries, as it was done during this period, and keep negotiation and showing that integration of European Union, of Ukraine to European Union, will be beneficial for all of the sides. And so the last today, this call, lots was mentioned about the animal welfare issues. Actually, we have taken the obligation, and they're still in place. That's from the 1st of January 2026, and it's 1 year and 2 months. All of these animal welfare obligations and standards will be voluntarily, how to say, because even if we don't enter the European Union till the time, they will be put in place in Ukraine to make this market standards, how to say, or the environment in which the products are produced the same. So I would say that it's quite honest and brave decisions on our side, which once again, first of all, to enter the European Union and to start collaboration as much as possible in all of the possible spheres of agriculture.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Minister. Now we are moving probably to the most important, although final part of our discussion, what the future will hold for EU-Ukraine trade, in agricultural products, particularly for poultry. We know that the ATM, the Autonomous Trade Measures introduced by EU and has been extended for 3 times, will expire in June next year. The European Commission is going to launch negotiations on a bilateral framework with Ukraine, drawing back on specific provisions of the association agreement. This is namely Article 29, that enables the parties to discuss a further progressive liberalization of tariffs and tariff rate quotas on a bilateral basis. Minister, we will start with you by asking, again, not committing you in any way, how do you think Ukraine would approach what would be the ideal scenario for Ukraine for this future trade arrangements under the Article 29 in order first to preserve the lifeline for Ukrainian exports to the EU market, understanding that indeed EU market continues to be the key outlet for our producers in these difficult times. And second, of course, while trying to take due account of the sensitivities of European farmers. Minister, over to you.
Thank you. Of course, the ideal will be complete free trade on both sides. Zero quotas and tariffs. We are ready also for all of the European products, agriculture. And we will definitely get it when we enter the European Union. Until that date, of course, we do understand that it can be not so easy to reach. But anyway, so for us, it's once again about the honest dialogue and the just position. So as I mentioned, as we are introducing anyway by some roadmap all of these European Union standards in Ukraine until they join the European Union, it will be honest to also to make these conditions of access better on the annual basis. Okay, we have the starting point, the current ATM. It will be quite honest to take it and put that it's agreed, it is increased, for example, by 20% on the annual base until we join the European Union. So we do understand that these products are sensitive. We understand that it's necessary politically also to make these regulations, but it will also provide a clear prospects for the Ukrainian producers until we join the European Union. And to make some compromise in this way that it should be increased on the annual basis, I think it would be the win-win story to all of the participants.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I think this is also an opportunity for all our panelists who represent different stakeholders in our common endeavor to express their views on this topic. Perhaps I would start with Alexandra Framenko, as representative of Ukrainian agriculture exporters, representative of UCAB. Alexandra, what do you think should be maybe not even the ideal, but a compromise scenario that would be a win-win solution for both sides, for the Europeans and for Ukrainians, the post-ATM arrangement? Your views?
First of all, changes of the TRQs for Mercosur. That's the beginning. The else, well, what I can say is that Ukraine is a candidate country. So we obliged with the legislation and we working towards it. And it would be unfair, not for Ukrainian producers, nor for European customers that buy Ukrainian products, to return to the level of the TRQ of 2021. As a business representative, I do understand that we are in a very tough situation in which we don't want to appear again as it was in spring 2024 during the revision of the ATM. So we need to have some kind of common understanding. So what I can say from the business perspective is that we do understand that the products like poultry, eggs, and sugar will be definitely future sensitive for European Union. We do understand that even though we would like to have completely free access to the European Union, we understand that it is impossible. But what is in the end possible in our situation? In our situation, I think it's possible to have an understanding that there will be a TRQ system where poultry, eggs, and sugar, and maybe some other products super sensitive for European Union. That's the question of negotiations. But the level should not be lower than we have right now. Physically, Ukrainian producers currently cannot allow themselves to return to the level of 90,000 tons of export to the European Union. It is mostly impossible. And also keep in mind that there's very high import tariffs that are beyond the TRQ, which are even higher than for the Brazil right now. So in our case, we would like to have the TRQ at least of the current size, with the possibility to increase and with the possibility to slowly aligning or even being incorporated with the European market. Why? Because the only one big question that there is right now for the poultry sector is the animal welfare, and law on animal welfare will be mandatory from the 1st of January 2026 on the livestock. And in that case, well, you just need to think from the other side. So we have producers who would say, okay, yeah, but I do not export to the European Union. Why should I implement all these standards if I am not interested there? But in that case, European Union also needs to show that it is there is a market, there is a possibility to cooperate on this market, and in this way also financially stimulate the work of the poultry sector of Ukraine. I'm not speaking again, not just about MHP, returning you to the point that 110 producers working on Ukrainian market. And all of them need to, in the end, be in line with the European standards. And for that, they also need to receive an understanding that they can export to the EU if they are in line. And this cannot be limited with 90,000 tons divided between 14 companies that are exporting. So we should end up with some strategy of how to pause, slow down, I don't know, do something with Mercosur, because they will not be in line with the EU norms. And we are obliged, and it's just not fair comparing the situation between Ukraine and Brazil and with the access to the European market.
Thank you, Alexandra. Over to our EU colleagues, Paul, Henri, and Manon. Would you like to comment? Would you like to share your view on this question? So the reasonable scenario, which would be a win-win solution for all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Nazar. First, I would like to welcome the understanding of Mr. Wysotsky and from Alexandra that you understand the sensitiveness of our sector, and that of course, if there is full liberalization and huge imports from Ukraine, that will also have an impact on our farmers. There have been a lot of farmers demonstration recently in the EU, so it is sensitive and it can have a negative ultimate impact on the willingness of some people to support Ukraine in the long term, and we don't want that, clearly. Then on the specific TRQ for poultry meat, I'd like to remind that this TRQ has already been quite drastically increased. Initially, at the signature of the agreement of the DCFTA, it was a 40,000 tons quota. It has been more than doubled with 50,000 tons additional following the circumvention. So it's already quite an important quota. Compare maybe to the other sensitive sectors, we have already quite a big quota for poultry meat. So therefore, we tend to be quite conservative on that, and there might be some discussions we can see. Maybe we should work also on making the cake bigger, actually, altogether, to increase the consumption. We know that poultry meat consumption is increasing globally. It also slightly increased in Europe. So there might be some possibility to work on that also to develop the consumption. But let's see where the negotiations will take us. Of course, as I said before, we are very much open for dialogue and finding some synergies. So let's continue on that front, and let's continue to work together.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And for the egg side, well, if we talk about the TRQs on our side, they are not acceptable as they are now, since the threshold has been reached, and it seems that it's not problematic still for Ukraine to continue exporting eggs regarding the lower cost of production. So I think here for the TRQs, we cannot really find a win-win situation, but indeed we have to discuss about maybe what are the synergies that we can find. And I would second on the Mercosur. I think we can work together as well against Mercosur. That's something that we will be interested in, and also to have a look at a proper let's say, implementation of what is already normally agreed in the association agreement. We would like also, in the ideal case, to see Ukraine recognizing regionalization, because it works pretty well in the EU and it's recognized by most of our trade partners. So this is something we would like to see in the future. And if we see a further liberalization or further accession of Ukraine, well, this has to be done in a smooth way and not as a shock for our farmers, because Paul said we have a consumption that is increasing, so we do need a bit more supply for poultry and eggs. But we also struggle in Europe with generational renewal. So if we don't manage to propose to supply this demand, for sure we will need imported products, but this has to be done in a way so not more farmers decide to quit, and so also farmers decide to start producing in the future. So this is very important for us, and any shock could be terrible for the impact on generational renewal.
Thank you. Thank you, Manon. I think, how to say, these are exactly the questions. I mean, the smooth integration of Ukraine to the EU as a part of enlargement process. These are the questions that now Commissioner-designate Marta Kos is desperately trying to respond to during her hearings in the European Parliament. They are taking place right now. So I think we also have to later to watch the video recording, along with the video recording of Commissioner-designate Hansen, who is asking to be appointed for Commissioner for Agriculture. Thank you very much, our dear panelists, for your time. We have come to the end of our discussion. I would like now to turn to the questions, but I see that quite a few questions that we have in our chat window has already been either answered by our panelists in writing, or I believe they have already been covered during the discussion. I will pick up at least maybe one, and I will ask everyone, let's say all Ukrainian panelists to answer that. The biggest challenges for Ukrainian companies to comply with EU legislation of the future, meaning, for instance, antimicrobial usage and environmental conditions. Perhaps, I'm sure, Svetlana, that you already covered that, but if you can very briefly summarize the challenges that, for instance, your company will have to face in order to be able to comply with the standards as you prepare to, as you export to the European market.
You mean to say the challenges that we are already faced, or that we are?
Yes. If you can
Yes.
simply summarize them and say what you think, how you would be able. Do you need any support, external support, also from the part of European Commission, because pre-accession assistance is a part of the process, and whether you would need additional support in this regard? Thank you.
Yes, of course. There were a lot of challenges to implement, because EU standards are very huge, very large requirements for producers to be competitive for the EU market. And we have a challenge, because we want to open in our new factory exactly for these requirements, and to be sure that all the implementation of this legislation will be closing on this February. And we did this. We follow this implementation, and we need not only 1, 2, or 3 years. There is a lot of time to be competitive for this legislation. Almost we have to do not only for the slaughtering house, but all the stagements, starting from grossing and ending the slaughtering of the poultry. So we need to be competitive in investments, in following all this chain. That's why it's not like a very easy question for small producers or for farmers to be competitive with it. That's why it's first challenge, like your full integrated chain to be fully implementation for these requirements. The second point, there were challenges for production, like welfare inspectors that must be each day on your facility. So for another like Gulf countries or etc., we didn't need like to be this requirement. So requirements for EU legislation and for another market, they are like the first challenge to be competitive and to be controlling by this requirement. The second point is about the challenge. It's every of our directors, CEO, etc., must be ready that they must invest a lot every day for this production in such conditions that we have in such economics that we have, or etc. So we can be ready for everyday investment, because we're not only investment in the equipment, we invest in education of our employees. It's everyday work, because there are a lot of trainings, a lot of comparing with the Food Safety Agency. They also work with our veterinaries, laboratories, etc., to be improving every day our work according to this legislation. So this like laboratory issues that we are doing every day, not for every country requirement, but for EU, we are insist on the controlling this everyday product. So like this first of the minds that I have for this question.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone want to join in on this? Or very good. And then, since we are really short of time, colleagues, the last question that I see in the Q&A session, and again, I see this is about the MHP company. I'm afraid that MHP looks like some kind of a supervillain in a child cartoon here, and I think we should. And I would try, as a moderator, I will take a different view of this question. I'll try to rephrase it in a more neutral way, not to single out any particular company. The financing. Here we see that, for instance, some of the Ukrainian agriculture enterprises have access to international financial institutions financing, or even development banks. Others do not. At the same time, European producers also have access to a variety forms of financing, also ranging from EU institutions as part of agricultural subsidies. What do we think about the level playing field? Can we say that this is equal, and whether it should be taken into account in terms of market access, in terms of application of standards? A very brief tour de table between our Ukrainian and European colleagues. Alexandra, can I start with you?
Yes.
But
yeah,
we
I'll
need
be
to
very
be fast, so please don't make it for another hour. Thank you.
Love this level playing field. Okay, so one big question: does European subsidies stand for level playing field in all the levels of agricultural production compared to Ukrainian? Because in Ukraine we do not have subsidies, but luckily enough we have some of interested IFIs that would like to work with any of Ukrainian company, which provides eventually profitability to these IFIs who are also working European Union, on which European Union also earns. So, I mean, it's not a question to companies, because companies are trying to attract finances everywhere they can actually possibly attract them from. But it does not actually provide some disturbance, because the whole situation with the level playing field is already been disturbed. So we are trying to survive with the instruments we have, as much as the European Union is also trying to survive with instruments it has for its own producers.
Thank you. Paul-Henri, Manon, would you like to comment on this?
Manon, maybe you can go first. You're more expert
Yes.
than me.
On this, actually, to reply to this comment, European poultry and egg producers do not receive direct subsidies from the EU. They receive some help from the second pillar of our common agricultural policy, but for specific production systems such as organic, or to improve animal welfare, for risk management. So it's very little amount of money, a little help for different systems. So actually the, let's say, conventional farming is not subsidized at all. So it's the case for other sectors, but not for the poultry and egg sector.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe
Andre?
to explain that very shortly, that yeah, the EU subsidies is very much linked to the land, and therefore poultry meat producers, they don't really get any subsidies, especially, as Manon said, the standard production. So actually poultry is the bad example when it comes to subsidies. The grain sector is benefiting much more. Yeah, I hope that when Ukraine will join, they will also be eligible for these subsidies on land. But for poultry meat, unfortunately, don't expect to get many subsidies in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. I am pleased to say to announce that we are through with this webinar. We have completed our discussions. I invite Alex Lisica, President of UCAB, to say a few concluding words. And Alex, if I may, as a moderator, still, I think this touches a bit a raw nerve, the effectiveness of international financial assistance to Ukrainian agriculture sector, particularly from the IFIs. Everyone talks about the leading companies like MHP and others. What about the next companies? What about those who have never had the chance to work with IFIs, and yet they can be bankable, they can offer good quality products and have good prospects for exporting? How would you say, do the international financial institutions really come up to this challenge? Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much,
over to you.
Nazar. Thank you very much, Nazar. And honestly, I did enjoy very much the discussion today, and that we on some positions found compromises, even in the fighting against Mercosur, is actually a kind of good sign for me that we can find solutions and we can find also synergies. That's why such kind of dialogues are very important for us and for you as well. And I think we've been very honest on many questions, and I think honestly and trust, that's exactly what will help us in the future, having even more productive discussions than that one. But I found that very, very good. So thank you very much to all of the panelists. So coming back to your question about IFIs and financing, I think very important is also for European colleagues to understand that in Ukrainian agriculture, we don't have the normal distribution of farms like you have in European Union. That means we have, unfortunately, bimodal distribution of the farms. On the one hand, we have not the big number of large farms. On the second hand, we have actually plenty of the very small and micro farms, starting with private households, farmers, etc. So, and that's exactly the problem. Why? Because I saw in the chat there were questions about the MHP and why they did get money from EBRD and other institutions. That's exactly the answer, because the majority of the companies, very small companies in Ukraine, they are not bankable. They are not able to take any kind of financial loans. And that ecosystem should be created in Ukraine. And there we have, unfortunately, beside the war and all the troubles we have linked to the war, we have to improve the quality of the reporting by the small farms. We have to improve the financials by the small farms, and we have actually to educate them to think more financially rational. And that's I think the big issue, which will take a lot of time for us. Regarding the IFIs, unfortunately, my impression is after long discussions, they like to go to the recovery conferences or investor events with a very good rhetoric about supporting Ukraine, especially small and medium farms. But if you look on the projects which were realized over last years in the SME of agriculture in Ukraine from IFIs, the number is actually close to zero because of many reasons. First of all, of course, bankability, but in the second hand, if you propose an idea with a private equity fund for the small and medium companies, that will be not acceptable by IFIs because they don't trust in that. They found 1 million of problems in such kind of idea. And I think that's exactly probably the question also to Mr. Wysocki, Taras. But I think we need to create a kind of political pressure on IFIs, and political pressure should be coming from Ukraine to support more small and medium companies through financial instruments. Otherwise, it will not work. We will not be able to create a kind of ecosystem, and then we will have discussions like that one. In Ukraine, they are only mega farms or large farms, and that's not comparable with Europe. Yeah, that's partly not comparable with Europe, partly comparable, but part which is comparable with Europe, unfortunately, is far away from the standards in terms of their financial rules, in terms of their reporting, auditing, etc., etc. And I think that's a big thing what we have to push in Ukraine together with our policymakers on the IFIs, that their money, which is going to be invested into the recovery instruments, should be linked also to such kind of instruments like increasing of the bankability of the Ukrainian small and medium farms. Please, microphone, Nazar. Nazar, microphone.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex. So with this, I think we had a success in discussing key elements of our topic today, EU-Ukraine trade in poultry. I would like to thank every one of our panelists for their time, for their dedication, for their patience, specifically to Minister Vysotsky. And I would like to remind our audience that the recording of this event will be available on UCAB YouTube channel. So once again, this was the 7th online fireside chat run by UCAB to inform our European international audience about the Ukrainian agriculture sector. My name is Nazar Babitsky. I am UCAB Brussels office director, and we look forward to our next discussions dedicated to very important aspects of Ukraine's integration into the EU and the Ukrainian agriculture sector related. Thank you very much, everyone, and we wish you a very good day.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Goodbye.
much.
Goodbye.